And so, Kinship, hi, my name is Keguro Macharia. I am from Nairobi, Kenya. My pronouns across many languages are a, you, both of which are gender neutral, and he in English. I've been blogging since 2004, although I think this current incarnation of my blog is from 2006, and my blog is at gokera.wordpress.com. I'm interested in thinking about difference and its relationship toward freedom, that we are all different people. We have different interests, we have different pleasures, we have different belief systems or lack of belief systems. We come in various types of embodiments and psychic states and so on. All of those things are different. So how do we think across difference, and how do we think toward freedom? I had been asked to present something in the style of a TED Talk. And when I received that request, I thought to myself, no problem. TED Talks are easy. We've all watched them. People stand on stage and they say a few things and they sound very clever. I can sound clever. And then I started trying to do it in the style of a TED Talk, and I failed miserably. I just don't have the energy to stand on a stage and walk across and point at things and make very pointed statements. I don't think that way. Instead, my thinking tends to sort of wander around, kind of, oh, look at that tree and look at that leaf and look at that bird, and isn't that a nice sound you just heard? And what are the neighbors doing? So this will be more in that style of wandering around. I would encourage you to get comfortable, maybe have a drink nearby. I seem to be out of water. Oh well, tea. Have a snack. Uh, be in a comfortable position, whether you're seated or lying down, maybe standing. Um, I hope you're warm. I hope you're comfortable. I hope you're feeling cared for. There are different ways to engage academic thinking, and I'm going to mention two. You will notice that each slide has an image of a flower. Every day, usually twice a day, in the morning and in the evening, I walk outside and I capture images of whatever flowers happen to be in bloom. It's a way to remind myself that there is beauty in the world. And should you at any point get bored or tired, I encourage you to look at the flowers or to find some other source of beauty around you. Next, I think when we are encountering different ideas, different thinkers, sometimes it does not resonate as a fact or as an argument. Sometimes we experience it as the name of a song or a painting or a poem or some other kind of response. I would encourage you, as you're listening to this, if you're struck by any word, any term, any phrase, any sentence, and it brings a song to mind, write down that song. Make a playlist of songs as long as you want. I'd say 5 to 7. Share those playlists with each other. Um, find out what other people heard and let other people hear what you heard. A break. I've been asked to talk about kinship. So I understand kinship as a relation among different people that often models itself on the family. That means that terms such as mother or father, sister or brother, cousin, aunt or uncle are used to uh, relate to other people in terms of both the kinds of power relations that exist, who gets to ask who to do what, who gets to send who where, and so on, but also how we feel toward those people, their varying levels of respect and or disrespect. I think of kinship in at least two different ways. One, there is the traditional notion of biokin, people to whom you are related by blood, people who descend from a common ancestor. And here you can think of a family tree, which is the model for this kind of kinship. The second model is fictive kin, people among whom there is no blood relation, but there are relations of affection and often mutual obligation. The people you would say, you're so close to me, you're like my brother, you're so close to me, you're like my sister. This is my second mother. Those people, fictive kin, people with whom we build those things that we want and we expect from kinship. And those are often in the realm of affection and mutual obligation, the people who will show up for you. Within the Black diaspora, kinship is a dominant language. Thinkers have said that the Black diaspora, and here we're talking about transatlantic slavery and everything that leads up to it and everything that persists after it, is marked by the loss of kinship. People were stolen away from their homes, from their families, from people they loved. And this persists throughout the periods of slavery, where children can be sold away from their parents, husbands can be sold away from their wives. And I lean on the Black feminist scholar Horton Spillers, who says that kinship loses meaning since it can be invaded at any given and arbitrary moment by the property relations. The person who you're with as your sister can be sold away from you at any given and arbitrary moment, or can be gifted to someone else. Within the Black diaspora, and this is broadly speaking across the Americas, the word the words of kinship are used today and have been used since at least the late 19th century to attempt some kind of repair. I recognize you as my brother. I recognize you as my sister across the diaspora. And in recognizing you in these ways, I attempt to repair what was stolen from us. Kinship is also used as a language of repair between the Black diaspora and Africa. And there, the language, again, is usually about siblings. I recognize you as my brother. I recognize you as my sister. Within the broad field of queer studies, kinship has at least two aspects. In the first, kinship can refer to the harm one suffers from biological kin, whether that be being disowned because of your sexuality, of your gender, of your absence of gender, of your expression of self. Biokinship within queer circles has often been, and it continues to be in some places, a source of great harm, right? Simultaneously, queer communities or queer people have taken on the language of kinship as repair. You are my trans brother. You are my house mother. You are some kind of relation to me. And in using that language of kinship, I want to take away the sting of what was done to me, of what was harmed. So there's a way in both the queer diaspora and in queer relations that kinship is used to signify something that we desire, something that has harmed us, or that has been harmful in some way, or that we have lost, and now something that we want very much to do. We would like to form kin, to make kin with each other. This is understood as the highest way of being with each other, right? We want to make families with each other. Please take a sip of water. So, why am I here? I'm here because I wrote a book called Frottage, which has a very pretty cover image. And when I was thinking about this book and working across the Black diaspora and thinking about the Black diaspora in Africa, I noticed that kinship was the dominant language. It was the dominant metaphor. It was how people referred to each other. It was what people wanted from each other. And in that sense, shared Blackness was understood as a way of practicing kinship. So that is where the book begins, simply with this observation. Coming from queer studies, I started thinking, well, are there other kinds of practices that build and sustain relation? Are there other kinds of things we can do that um, create, support systems, people who will be there for you, people you'll be there for, right? And a short list. Friendship is obviously one of the major one. Hooking up with someone could be another one. Casual chats with strangers that make your day pleasant, right? Going dancing, sharing pleasure with other people through dancing or other kinds of physical things like sports, or dating. All of these build and sustain relation, uh, despite what might be the complications of duration. You hook up with someone for 5 minutes, that is different from a friendship that lasts for 20 years. Yet, what they build is a sense of a world that can be inhabited with other people, in a world that is filled with pleasure, a world that you would like to share with someone else. And that was the second part of what I thought about. How do pleasure and the erotic build and sustain relation? And I was thinking about this in part because the language of kinship can be very desexualizing, right? We want to be platonic in kinship, right? When I say you're my sister, you're my brother, I'm not saying I want to be intimate with you. And there's a way that we often push away what pleasure and the erotic do. And I think pleasure and the erotic build and sustain relation. We want to return to the things that make us feel good. And the things that make us feel good make us want to build institutions and practices where those things can be sustained. So, one of the things that I take from the great poet and thinker Audre Lorde is the notion of the erotic. The notion that the erotic is something special that we share, that it builds worlds. It is not simply something selfish about the self, but it is about the relations we have with other people. And I began by talking about difference, that we are all different people, and we come with different ideas about the world and different ways of being in the world. And sometimes difference can feel threatening. I've never been around someone like you. I've never encountered practices like yours. And one of the things Audre Lorde says is that the erotic can be a way to lessen the threat of difference. If I can go to a club with you and we can dance to the same music, or even if we can share the same playlists and understand that we enjoy the same things, or if we can both say we love the same food, That shared pleasure can be a ground that makes difference feel less threatening. How can I feel threatened by someone who likes cake or dancing or Cardi B? And I think the erotic is also something that teaches us about freedom. What is freedom? How do we imagine it? What does it feel like? I think freedom is about intensifying the ways we feel good in the world. Become a very important definition for me. It doesn't mean bad things won't happen. People get sick, accidents happen, people die, occasionally pandemics show up. But pleasure and the erotic can hold the promise of a world we want to be in and the promise of a world we want to share with other people. Here, I'm simply listing two thinkers who are foundational to how I think about these things. Samuel Delaney, especially in his wonderful book, Times Square Red, Times Square Blue, where he thinks a lot about casual contact and casual sexual contact and how those make the world a more pleasurable place to be. And second, Audre Lorde's Sister Outsider, which I'd say is an astounding read just about um, difference and how to think about difference and the different ways that Blackness and feminism and lesbianism and internationalism help to create a world and what it might mean to share that world with other people. So I end with the idea of kinship. We're not throwing kinship away, but are there other practices that we can think of that help us to share the world? And might the erotic be one of those key practices? Thank you for listening.